Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Reverend Connie Simon, and I am honored that you've chosen to be with us this morning. During the month of July, our campus is closed, but we're offering a series of shorter video messages for your enjoyment. After the service, please feel free to join us for coffee hour in Zoom. If you don't have access to the link for Zoom, please email member-care@firstuu.com. It is our tradition in Unitarian Universalism to begin our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our chosen faith. Today we do so with the reading Liberty's Daughters by Reverend Ada C. Bowles. Rise up, O woman, no longer sit at ease. The banner of thy freedom is lifting to the breeze. Be ready for the morning that breaks thy long dark night. Up, ignorance and bondage, and hail the coming right.
We are all
Feminist Baby, written and illustrated by Lauren Brantz. Feminist Baby loves to dance. Feminist Baby says no to pants. Feminist Baby likes pink and blue. Sometimes she'll throw up on you. Feminist Baby chooses what to wear. And if you don't like it, she doesn't care. Feminist Baby makes lots of noise. Feminist Baby throws her toys. Feminist Baby plays with dolls and cars. And when she sings, she's a baby rock star. Feminist Baby is as smart as she seems. Feminist Baby can be whatever she dreams. My question for you today is this. What did you dream about becoming when you were little? Share your thoughts with your family and friends this week or at coffee hour.
Rise in the sea.
My role models in ministry are many. I've been inspired by my blood relatives, past, present, and future, and by artists, writers, thinkers, and leaders throughout history. Among those leaders is a group of women ministers who, beginning in the late 1880s, changed the rules of ministry only to fade into history and be largely forgotten until their accomplishments were rediscovered and brought to light by the publication of Cynthia Grant Tucker's book, Prophetic Sisterhood, Liberal Women of the Frontier. Who were these women, and how is it that their female voices, typically silenced in society, came to be heard? First, there was the growth of liberal religion. Our Universalist ancestors, believing in salvation for all, were more welcoming of women generally, and less structured in their organization, making room for the participation of women. Unitarians, on the other hand, ever intellectual and cerebral, reinterpreted traditional Christianity to absolve Eve of having corrupted the human race. So in their own way, I guess they also created space for female participation in religious practice. Second, the United States was fulfilling its so-called manifest destiny to settle the West. The 1800s saw the Louisiana Purchase, the forced displacement of native peoples from their lands, the California Gold Rush, and the Homestead Act, which offered 160 acres of unoccupied land to anyone willing to settle there to improve the land and stay 5 years. Transcontinental railroad and telegraph systems became a reality. In 100 years, the population of the United States grew from 5 to 76 million people. Among those settling in the New West were liberal Christians, mostly Universalists, but a few Unitarians. Add to this the impact of the Civil War and the loss of hundreds of thousands of men. The end result is that in this new Western frontier, women were doing all kinds of jobs they'd never been able to do back east or in a society with a larger male population. All of the sudden, women were becoming doctors and lawyers and dentists and ministers. In 1870, there were 600 liberal Christian ministers. 5 of them were women. 20 years later, there were about 70. These women ministers were something special, largely rejected by the establishment and by Harvard, the preeminent place for theological education. These women mentored, encouraged, and supported one another as they planted new churches throughout the heartland. They didn't try to be like their male counterparts. Instead, they did ministry in a whole new way. These women, Mary Augusta Safford, Eleanor Elizabeth Gordon, Florence Buck, and Mary Leggett, to name just a few, saw ministry as an extension of their domestic role. Many were unmarried, or maybe were more accurately married to their careers. Few of them had children. They preached equality and responsibility to family. They saw themselves as educators and sought to make the church a place of learning not just on Sunday, but throughout the week. They created unity clubs, what we would today call small group ministries, where people could come to discuss the issues of the day. They supported women's clubs that encouraged women to aim higher than domestic chores, teaching them about money management and economic empowerment. Looking beyond the walls of the church, these clubs became part-time social work schools. For the Sisterhood, ministry was about teaching practical Christianity, work in the real world. But the actual church home was important too. Home was praised as a holy space. The church should reflect that as well. These women ministers recognized the church's responsibility for the whole of society and believed that the church building, regardless of its architectural style, should be functional and inviting to the community. For example, The Kalamazoo, Michigan church even had a gym for female members and attendees to use because stronger women meant stronger families. Author Tucker says it was all about bridging the private and public realms of religious expression and making the prophetic message accessible. And the best part of this, they rarely incurred debt. These women saved and raised the money to build new churches rather than borrow. Needless to say, the relationship of these independent women with Boston, with the American Unitarian Association, was not great. The AUA wasn't particularly fond of the Western liberals in general, and definitely not these outspoken females. AUA President Sam Elliott tried to freeze them out by withholding funding and making petty reporting demands while refusing to send out field officers to support these Western churches. But the sisters didn't care. They just found new ways to get things done. Mary Augusta Safford created an endowment fund upon which their churches could draw to support their congregations. The AUA strategy backfired as the women proved themselves much better with money than the male-dominated denominational office. If they were so successful, what happened to them? Well, times changed. There was a great internal transformation of liberal religion in the late 1800s that could be the topic of 2 or 3 sermons. Basically, liberals in the East and West had significantly different theological views. Did they consider themselves Christians? Could the more traditional theists and the radical ethical basis liberals remain united? Was this just an issue of polity whereby each congregation could decide for itself how to define God, religion, and Christianity? Quick answer is that a compromise was reached. But it hurt the ministers of the Sisterhood as they dealt with congregations that had been divided by the dispute. Some of them didn't agree with the compromise. Men who had previously been willing to listen to female ministers stopped coming to church. Also, in the early 1900s, society as a whole became manlier as women were steered back toward homemaking. Many women and some men left the clergy altogether and turned toward social work. The saddest part was that these devoted, talented, and faithful women were alienated and left behind. Some of the sisterhood did turn to social work. Some went from parish ministry to settlement houses. Many of these settlement houses that popped up through the East and Midwest were created to help women develop skills and lead better lives, provided a place for them to live and a place for them to learn so that they could contribute to society. Celia Parker Woolley opened the Frederick Douglass Center in Chicago and was instrumental in the founding of the Urban League and the NAACP. Some of the sisters shifted to the suffrage movement. Caroline Julia Bartlett Crane became a civil engineer, working to improve public sanitation, water supply, and meat and food processing. She considered herself to be a minister to municipalities, dedicated to using science to stimulate ethics and urban reform as the best way to teach liberal religion. These sisters led amazing lives, yet many of them died alone, broke, and forgotten. This book on their lives is wonderful, and I truly and highly recommend it. It's important that when we study Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist history, we study all of it, that we endeavor to hear all of the voices and to understand as many of the stories as we can. Because after all, our story is more than Emerson, Parker, and Thoreau. There are many voices that need to be heard. The Iowa Sisterhood the Prophetic Sisterhood are just a few of those voices. I'd like to share with you now some images of the sisters. Done. Please join me by reading the words on your screen as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.